Hello and welcome to today's event. I'm Matt Manners, CEO and founder of the Inspiring Workplaces Group. And welcome to our final Power Hour of 2025. Traditionally, these future trend sessions, as we all seem to put on at this time of the year, end up all being about tech and AI. But today we want to do something different because we've done that stuff in the past. The real future isn't built by tools, it's built by people. How we lead, how we adapt, how we care, and how we design workplaces where humans can truly thrive. And speaking of shaping the future, a quick reminder that our global early bird deadline for the 2026 Inspiring Workplaces Awards all over the world, all regions possible, closes in about 48 hours, but our big deadline is still at the end of February. So if you want your organization recognized for the incredible people shaping its success, now is the time. Today's session is not about fear of what's coming, but about intentional human-centered design of what's next. That's why I invited two people I deeply respect, people whose work is powerful, but whose kindness is even more influential. I also want to be a bit real. Social media is great and everything. You might have seen a photo of me in DC a few days ago, but I'm going to admit I'm running a little, actually very low on energy, thanks to a recent rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis. I don't like banging on about it, but the meds don't kick in for another month. So if I stumble, and to be honest, I already have, just know the real brilliance today is coming from our speakers, not me. Mind you, to be fair, I'm not entirely sure it would have ever have been from me, even without this autoimmune curveball. We did have a third speaker who had to step away, but life happens. So, which means Perry and Jason have more room to go deeper, and that's a brilliant thing. And yes, you might even get out ahead of the hour. So let's dive straight in. Our first speaker is Perry Timms, founder and chief energy officer at PTHR. Is a long-standing trailblazer in reimagining work, a six-time member of HR's most influential thinkers list, a big Detroit Lions fan, and just an all-round great guy. Perry will explore why turbulence is now the normal state of work, why traditional change management can't keep up, and how polymorphic organizations, I can't wait to get into this, polymorphic organizations, shape-shifting, adaptive, dynamic will become HR's defining design signature. It will show us how HR can organize itself for greater creativity, impact, and future readiness, and what it means to become true architects of the systems of work. Perry, we're ready to see the future through your eyes. So welcome to the event, Perry Timms.
Oh, thank you. What a lovely intro, Matt. Nice to be back on screen with you. And thanks for the moment of realness as well about the diagnosis. So, you know what? We're all living with something, right? So,
Yes.
I'm heartened to hear that you're going to hit this head on and give it your best shot. But love the pre-apology. Not necessary at all. We're all with you, mate. So,
Wicked.
Thank you very much. Cool.
Well, I'll be very happy to leave you to it for a few minutes.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, yeah. So great to see you, folks. And yes, so love the fact that this is like a power hour, and there was three of us, but Jason and I have kind of pre-contracted that we'll do whatever we can to fill that time. So on screen is my kind of LinkedIn QR code if you want to get in touch with me afterwards. I'm always very happy to add to the family on LinkedIn. But yeah, as Matt said, I've been in the HR world long enough to know whether I love it or loathe it, and I absolutely love it. So there's a lot about HR I think that's yet to come. I think that's probably what excites me the most about it. So let's have a look and see what I think is in store for us. And I've been spending the last 6 months diving into the concept of polymorphic organizations. I'll explain what I mean by that. But let's start with the story of where did this come from? So for about the last 20 years, I've been sort of researching and even operating as a flat, non-hierarchical, self-managed approach, because my sense at the time was that's kind of where the future's going for all those things that Matt talked about, the human-centered aspect to it, the removal of oppressive hierarchical interference, and the whole sense that we have more agency and determination about our futures and what we do to bring ourselves to life through our work. So I discovered things like Agile and Scrum, and there were lots of examples where people were breaking away from orthodox, very tight linear structures and doing much more freestyling and free forming. And I just hoped it would be the norm 20 years later, we look around us and lots of organizations are still stratified hierarchies. So I kind of got a little bit disillusioned, but I also thought, well, maybe, just maybe, I was looking in the wrong place, and maybe there's something else we can do to determine a future of work for us that actually does do, as Matt said, it brings us to life, fulfills us, helps us thrive. So this whole sense of a polymorphic organization, ironically, comes from object-oriented design or object-oriented programming in technology. There are 7 elements, and polymorphism is one of them. But if you look at the history of this word, it's from ancient Greek, many forms, polymorphe. So the whole sense in biology is that there are organisms that can shift their shape and look and feel, and the chameleon there is there for a reason, depending on the data it receives, adapting based on context. And that's how it works in computing forms as well, that an object in a program will adapt and do different things depending on the data that calls it to do that. I just thought it was a beautiful metaphor for an organization that needs to be like that. As Matt said, the whole sense of constant, persistent, and almost convulsive and even unforeseen change is causing us to go, it's not about change management. It's about rhythms. It's about sensing. It's about experimentation. It's trying to get ahead of the curve rather than constantly and breathlessly try and catch up with what the world demands of us. But I think we've got to start from the point that we are still largely in the shapes that came to us through the Industrial Revolution of the 1800s, through the 1900s into the early 2000s. So there's a whole concept that we work in fixed departments, in silos, top-down command, very standardized jobs that we all do, that whole mechanical, machine-like existence. But there's an entrepreneur who bucked that trend in the 1980s and started my interest in alternative ways to do it. Ricardo Semler, from taking over his father's engineering business in Brazil, Semco, he disbanded management and he created self-managed units of people who had their own P&Ls, their own engineering clients. And this quote sums it up. We've spent centuries learning how to control people. Now we need to learn how to let them go. That's the kind of philosophy I think sees us through into a much more uncertain future of work. So when we look at today's future of work, Matt's already hinted about a lot of this. It isn't just about technology, but let's just say that that is driving a lot of it with the modularization, digitization, miniaturization, and even kind of squashing of cost of things. It costs us like less than 0.01 cents now to produce some form of circuit board that would have cost a lot more 5 and 10 years ago. So the way we're able to harness technology is causing us to have lots and lots of things now at our fingertips in terms of opportunities. But if we look around, teams being more distributed, both in office, out of office, geographically far flung, functionally no longer kind of sat in teams of their own ilk for too long, multidisciplinary kind of approaches are coming through. But this is not something we should be afraid of. It's actually something that almost feels like a natural evolution for us. So systems thinker Donella Meadows coined the phrase decades ago. A truly profound and different insight is you can design systems to be adaptive. You build into them adaptability. You don't build into them rigidity and complete and utter stuckness. Now, if I wanted to create a more complex slide, I don't think I could, but there's a kind of realization that I think we need to take a hold of here, is that at the moment we are in what we could always call the legacy organization. It has its backstory and it has its right now presence. But we are also very, very taxed and also very participative in what the future organization is. What we haven't quite realized is that means we are no longer running one organization with perhaps a transformation program alongside. We are running 2 organizations, future and legacy, at the same time, in the same head, in the same workloads. So that's why I think we've got an enormous amount of work to do that we're kind of puzzled by. It's like, with technology, shouldn't we be getting more efficient? Well, actually, it doesn't feel that way. And even the craft that I've come through in the HR field, organization design and development, I'm seeing it no longer as episodic or kind of tinkering activities. It is absolutely this free-flowing sense that we're oscillating between future and legacy, between experimental and then much more stabilized. We are constantly feeling like we're oscillating between those kind of states, modalities, what the tasks are, the technology we use, the mindset we have, and the skills that we deploy. So organizational oscillation is a kind of frame that I've been able to build into what it means to be more polymorphic and therefore take on many different forms. So if I give this a diagrammatic representation, when we talk about oscillation, it literally is like a sound wave. It's like a sound wave goes up and gets higher, then it might get less resonant. That doesn't mean it disappears. It might be at a pitch you can't hear. But the idea behind this is that we are expanding and consolidating all the time when it comes to the rhythm of change. So in a traditional OD sense, we had interventions, plans, and programs. But in an oscillation sense, it's rhymes and rhythms, rather, a pulse, and a sense of ongoing releases of updates to what it is we're in as an operating system of work. So it's about meeting that world of flux and saying, right, we're going to go with that rhythm. We're going to move through those kind of sound oscillations. So if you think, what does that look like as a kind of change curve? It isn't one, it's a change oscillation. We kind of expand because we maybe have new frontiers, different technologies, alternative ways of working and leading. Then we may kind of consolidate a little bit and get better at that and embed that and imbue that before we go to our next wave of expansion and consolidation. So that's just one way to kind of look at it as a sound wave. And that's what change is demanding of us these days. So what is a polymorphic organization then? It's a completely new concept. It isn't written anywhere, so nobody knows about it. But what I've been doing over the last 6 months is quite literally looking at what's lying around, what theories and models and tools and techniques and practices we've all been experimenting with in a rather random way, almost like tiles that we could then form into a mosaic. And I'm just trying to create the pattern that those tiles can actually give us to create the picture of an organization that deliberately changes its shape and form and flow according to what's needed by the world, the customers, the colleagues and employees and everybody around them. And Russell Ackoff is a big hero of mine, another systems thinker. And if we just look at this concept of managerial ideas, you manage a system more effectively when you focus on the interactions of the parts, not the parts taken separately. So polymorphism quite literally is telling us to start thinking about the interactions more than we are the individual parts. We are very granular and separate and divisional at the moment. Polymorphism is calling for us to look at the intersectionality and the interplay of those more than we do their unique qualities. So you can see that if we want a division, like a legal function that needs regulation and safety, we don't have to disband it. We don't have to make it a trendy scrum. We can keep it as it is because it holds us safe. That doesn't mean to say that we have to replicate that across more creative and dynamic functions like customer, product, research, and so on. We think about how we hold innovation and how we use insight and how we make things more inclusive, where we don't divide them. So we create spaces where we can congregate, where we can move to where the work is, where it wants us to be. So there's quite a lot in polymorphic organizations that will challenge convention, but it's not replacing it, it's wrapping around it, it's sitting above it, it's underneath it, it's permeating through it. It isn't a replacement, it's an adaptation of it. If we look at leadership in a polymorphic sense, then what do we want from leaders who could change shape, shift, form, flow, logic, whatever's needed in response to what the world needs? What I'm seeing is lots of leaders who are getting a little bit kind of constrained, perhaps, and a little bit fearful. So they're kind of going to their old playbook of command, control, orders, because that feels safe. It doesn't necessarily equate to safe. It's not confusing, but it's equally not broadening the sense of what's possible. So it feels like it's constricting. And when we talk about innovation, optimization, and belonging, those are three things that I think are going to be the signature traits of leaders who can adapt, who can listen, sense, tune, experiment, learn, and still keep things safe, but without being constrained and constricted and shrinking away from the possibilities. So there's something about leaders shifting to those three elements that I think is a really powerful calling. And when I talked about spaces, this is where I've sketched out where I think things live, where work happens, not just in our divisional demarcation, like marketing, R&D, operations, sales, supply chain, whatever it is. It's more built around the entities and the people. So like customers, suppliers, our own people, our leadership, and the all-important stuff that I know drives a lot of inspiring workplaces in Matt's kind of community, culture. linked to that skills and capabilities. They beautifully come together to talk about people and being prosperous from a people perspective. But then we also need data, assets, products, systems, technology, capital. These are all the production aspects that we need. They're also linked to prosperity. Overall, if we think about them as a combined set of spaces, they bring us a whole sense of what prosperous and sustainable performance could look like. But it doesn't have to sit in these geographical and functional divisions that we've been so used to. That seems to get in the way now. So when we talk about a polymorphic organization, it's not a structure, it's a platform. It's something to build on, it's something to host different elements that need to do different things in order for your organization to either respond to change curves or get ahead of change curves and be much more future ready than we are now. So there's lots I could talk about, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to focus on AI as a kind of almost catalytic shift that we need to be more mindful of. Now, this comes from Laszlo Bock's work that he published in May earlier this year. So he's a former VP of HR from Google. He's done a lot looking into early adoption of AI at enterprise scale. And here's a few things that I think are really staggering. AI is flattening the curve for performance gaps. So we think how it used to be that we needed to acquire knowledge, we maybe needed to have some experience, go on a training program. We can now just talk to our bot copilot and say, I need to know a little bit more about systems thinking because I've got an instance here where there's a lot of complexity, and it can give you lots and lots of knowledge. So you can acquire that quickly. Sure, you've got to put it into practice to be competent, but we've already shortened knowledge curves to seconds rather than days, weeks, or even months. And things like junior roles and the learning kind of currency aspect is something we've really got to take into account. We're seeing graduate hiring reduce already. Some of that's market pressures. Others is through automation. Algorithmic rule-based work that normally people would start with is potentially disappearing from the equation. So where do we start? How do we bring people into a workplace when we haven't got that kind of ladder of capability and confidence to move them to? And we haven't really talked about agentic AI and its real impacts when it's taken on its own thinking and its own planning and its own resourcefulness, really, without being prompted. So more is coming through the advent of automation technology, and therefore an organization's shape and form is quite literally going to be changing before our very eyes. Polymorphism is our way of being prepared for that and respond to that and even be ahead of that as quickly as we possibly can. But how do you get there? How long will it take you to become this shape-shifting, more adaptive, but still very kind of honouring structure and rigidity where you need it? My kind of guesstimate about this is that we're already probably a little bit polymorphic with tiger teams and squads and some projects that cross boundaries and that work in different ways. So we could start from the point that we're probably already about 6.2% polymorphic anyway. And we could sort of double that. We could start to get more experimental with where else can we sort of decouple, unhinge, create different spaces, move in different ways. This is a constant discovery, adapt, learn, feedback loop kind of process. But my estimation is if you're a large corporate enterprise, by year 5, if you really go for being polymorphic, you won't even recognize what was legacy at one point. It will just become an imbued sense of who you are now and who you will be in the future. So that's my sense of the trajectory. So just a reminder, what is polymorphic all about? It lets you program in the present with an eye to the future. That was Peter Denning's definition. So it's not about abandoning structure, it's about transcending it, it's about honouring it, but making it more adaptable than we currently see. And it's definitely something about not stasis, not chaos. It's not a polarity thing. It's about intentional responsiveness to the market, the needs of people, the demands of the planet, and so on. So we should ask ourselves, what work needs clarity? What work needs flexibility? How will we shapeshift? And how can we become polymorphic as a kind of aspiration for our companies? And really, the ancient Greeks would be the TEDx talkers of now. Heraclitus, the only constant is change. Absolutely, that's kind of the game in town. And I've been serializing my thoughts on polymorphics. I couldn't squeeze it into just a 15-20 minute session, but if you go to Substack and look up my sort of series of posts, I'm on about number 7 at the moment. I'm tackling things like performance and culture and learning and leadership, because I've got this sense that I want to see polymorphic become a thing that we get used to talking about, exploring and becoming as our way of creating that human-centered design that Matt talked about at the start. And that's me done. So I think I've hit the time all right on that one, Matt. So thanks very much for that.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to desperately form my questions in my head, so I'm glad Jason is next, so I can have more time to think about those. Heraclitus, I've only just started getting into my ancient philosophers, the Stoics, at the minute.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Ahead of the time. Ahead of the time.
I mean,
wisdom beyond.
Mind blowing that they are bang on the money right now.
All the time. Yeah, exactly. Ironic, right?
So thank you so much, Perry. We will see you when Jason has done his thing.
Look forward
see you
to
soon.
it. Thanks.
Right, so I've just mentioned his name a couple of times, but let me introduce him properly. Our next speaker, Jason Lauritsen, has been a speaker for us for many years and is co-founder of Check In to Thrive, has spent his career championing the human side of leadership with real clarity and compassion. Jason's here to tackle a fundamental truth. Underskilled, overwhelmed managers are costing organizations their future. As Perry's just referenced, with AI accelerating, remote work evolving, and expectations shifting, managers are being asked to do more with less, and employees feel the impact most. Jason will show us how to flip that script by equipping managers with the tools and support they actually need so they can lead with confidence and humanity in 2026 and beyond. So please welcome to the Power Hour, Jason Lauritsen. Hello.
I love the idea of the Power Hour. Like that just feels right. I feel like I should have done some push-ups or something before we did this, Matt. So I appreciate
I feel like I'm the absolute opposite of that right now. So you'll be bringing the power, but looking forward to hearing you.
I felt a call to action, so I'll try to bring it as much as I can. I will try to, like the old Saturday Night skit, right? We're here to pump you up, Matt.
Yeah, I should have got some Survivor music playing in the background for some Eye of the Tiger. So
here you go. Well, whatever caffeine you have within arm's reach, you go for that, and I will. I'll fill a few minutes to let you relax.
Fantastic. I'll see you soon.
All right. So hello. It's good to be with you. I always like to kick off a little bit with sort of following Matt's lead, I guess, a bit of humanity. It's one of the things I've always admired about Matt as a human being is just how much heart he leads with and how open he is. And I think that's what makes him sort of the perfect person to advocate for inspiring workplaces, because he could be the mascot for inspiration in that way. So I bring greetings to you from just outside of Omaha, Nebraska, in dead center in the middle of the US. I like to share this slide mainly just to say hello and to let you know that the reason I do things is really anchored in that photo. That is my family, my wife, and my 3 children. The 2 of them still, well, I guess one of them in particular is still getting taller. I particularly, I think, will end up really valuing this photo, which was taken this summer, because it might be the last time that I am the tallest member of my family. That young man on the left side, I think, is out to get me and take that title from me. So this was a little bit about me. And I think the main thing that you need to understand about me as we step into this conversation today is that I spend most of my time thinking about how to support organizations and leaders in moving their business forward. And one of the kind of pivot points or really critical points in that is your managers and your leaders and sort of what they are facing and what they are, how they are equipped and how we're equipping them and supporting them. And so what I want to talk about today is, I was asked to speak about trends, right? A trend that's going to be important in 2026. And I'll be honest with you up front. This is not a new trend. This is a trend that has probably been true for the last several years. And it will continue to be true into the future if we don't finally actually take some action to solve it. And I know there are some organizations that are certainly doing so. Some of my clients are certainly doing that. But it's something we need to deal with. And it's the sort of the plight of the middle manager within our organization. And I think like I said, this is not a new trend. I mean, we know that if we're paying attention to what's happening with managers, we know that managers they kind of have, I think, the hardest job inside of an organization because they are sandwiched between employee needs, right? Everything that an employee needs, what do they need? Direction, they need support, they need guidance, they need coaching, they need feedback, they need all the things, right? And they're sort of sandwiched in the pressure that comes downhill from executives to execute on the strategy, to maximize performance, to retain our people, to find and hire great people, to motivate our teams. And for years and years, I've been involved in the work of employee engagement. And you look at that work, and oftentimes we're looking at surveys. We're using surveys to measure employee engagement, and it's always interesting to me because Gallup was the first one to tell us 30 years ago. I think they were the ones that coined the phrase, employees don't leave jobs, they leave what? And I can hear you saying it, managers, right? It's the manager. We have a bad manager problem, and it kind of became this thing that we took on as a mantra, right? It's always the managers. And if employees aren't getting what they need, it's their manager's fault, of course. If the organization isn't performing, if we're not retaining people, if employees aren't engaged, whose fault is it? It's the manager. It's always the manager. So why would anyone in their right mind want this job? I don't know, but there are a lot of people doing it because that is their role and they're doing the best they can. And so this job has been hard since the beginning. Right, since the very beginning, like Perry talked about, the legacies that we've inherited from the Industrial Revolution, which is kind of when the birth of management happened. From the very early days, management had a terrible and hard, difficult job, and it's only continued to get harder and more difficult over time. And so, if we understand and recognize this job is challenging as is. And it has been, nothing new there. But let's throw on top of it what's happened over the last, let's call it 5 years, and sort of what's happening up to now. If we think about, kind of what's happening in organizations today, there is most assuredly a pressure and intensity, kind of a volume knob being turned up by executives on the organization, on employees, but specifically on managers to do more with less. I was actually just talking with someone this morning about some research, a massive research project that they haven't even published yet. But one of the things they were sharing with me about the research is that there's a huge emphasis in what they heard from executives about sort of their focus is shifting back to productivity, right? That next year is really going to be all about productivity. And so they're expecting more and more and more. And the manager is right at the heart of that, right there. If employees aren't doing more, then it's the manager's fault, as it always is. But then add on top of that, if I'm a manager, I'm getting more pressure to get more out of my employee. But at the same token, the employee needs have changed. The employee needs or expectations of me have changed too, based on kind of the experience we went through in the pandemic. Now I have employees that expect me to care about their feelings. I need to be able to have a conversation with them about things outside of work. I need to be able to support their well-being. I need to understand if they're a caretaker outside of work, and I need to be accommodating that. And I have to deal with all of that. At the same time, I'm being pressured to try to extract more performance out of you from the folks at the top. That's not a great place to be. And oh, by the way, there's a couple studies out as I was putting together the research for this. There's a couple studies that were suggesting that managers spend, when they survey managers and ask them, they're spending between 60 and 75% of their days in meetings. And in fact, recently I've been having some conversations with chief, like CHROs and chief people officers about developing managers, kind of the challenge of skilling up managers. And one of the things that came up in most of the conversations was that even when a manager knows they need to skill up, they're craving more development, more support, they can't make time for it. right? Even when you make it available, the managers that even tell you that they want it don't show up because they're so time poor. They're so stretched because of these other factors, they can't even get to the thing that would help them do their job more effectively. So we have all of this going on. Do more with less. I've got to care in a different way. I have to play a bigger role for my employees. I have no time to do that because I'm sitting in a bunch of meetings all day long, most of which add no value to me and my ability to do my job. And then let's pile on to that the environment, as Perry said, we're in an environment of constant and accelerating change. So I'm having to be a change manager all the time, which creates maximum uncertainty for employees. And guess what? Uncertainty is what gives birth to disengagement because it undermines my relationship and connection with my work and with the organization. So change is really difficult. And oh, by the way, not only all of this going on, right? The degree of difficulty of management already increasing. And now today, I have to manage probably some people that are maybe in the office, some people that are maybe remote, some people that I don't know when they're going to be in the office or where they're going to be. And so I have to be able to not only manage effectively, but manage effectively maybe, hybridly or maybe asynchronously. I don't know, but I have to take the skills I don't have and then try to make them work on a landscape that I don't really even understand because it just got introduced to me. And oh, by the way, AI crashed the party. And so I've got a whole group of employees that don't know how to use this thing. Executives at the top of the organization have decided that we're all going to use AI to become 3 times more productive, but they haven't given me the support or the guidance or the training to help support my employees and what that looks like. So then my employees are concerned that they don't know how to do it, but they're also looking around saying, I'm pretty sure they're going to try to eliminate my job. So they're afraid and they're playing defense. And here sits the manager. And the manager is supposed to be like, no, don't worry. I'm going to keep you engaged and happy and keep you all pulling in the right direction. Right. So, and you've got a manager that's also supposed to be using AI, maybe worrying about whether they're going to get replaced by AI. And they're supposed to be carrying all this at the same time. And throw on top of that there was a couple of studies that I found. These are 2025 studies of managers that said up to 75% of the managers in these surveys reported receiving absolutely no training, either at the point of promotion when they moved from being a non-manager to a manager, or since then. And so you have people that are in a job. They're tasked with managing these other humans and caring for the performance of these other humans and making sure that they're meeting expectations. And yet, I've never been given any formal training on how to do it. And the job is getting increasingly complex by the day. And so I'm falling farther and farther behind. And so this is the current state of middle managers. This is where we are. And guess what? The trend is it ain't getting better, right? Because of all the factors that I just shared. Unless we intervene, it's not getting better. So what does this mean? What's happening? Well, there's a whole list of studies out there that are like alarm bells going off. For example, this is from a Wiley Workplace Index research they did. 47% of people managers in their survey, and I think this one included a couple thousand people, reporting severe levels of stress. And then another separate survey says up to a third, almost a third of US employees say their boss is too stressed to help them at work. Not they're too busy, not that they're unskilled, they are too stressed. And the employee, they're so stressed, the employee knows they're so stressed that they can't provide support. Not a good place to be. On top of that, back to Gallup. Gallup's most recent data set says that manager engagement has actually dropped 3 points. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but if you know much about the Gallup engagement data, that's a huge drop. Year over year, 3% is huge. Managers are struggling. They're disengaged. Well, and just think about that. That also says that the people that we have that we're all expecting to be accountable for engaging our people are not engaged. 70% of them themselves are not engaged. So how effectively do you think they're doing at engaging our people if they themselves are not engaged? I don't think that's probably ending well for most. And then you throw on top of that this is a recent study too, LinkedIn data. Bad manager might drive 69% of US employees to quit their jobs. That was sort of what employees were saying. And so you look at all of this, that means we have a bunch of managers that are struggling. We have a bunch of managers that are at risk eventually. And there's quite a bit of data that says like a manager burnout is a huge, huge risk, and it's increasing because of all these factors. And so you're going to have people quit. You're going to have people burn out. You're going to have people spin out. You're going to have all kinds of that. And that creates then a second order problem that Perry mentioned in his slide, was this leadership gap, is that though everybody else in the organization that's a non-manager is watching this happen and saying, yeah, no, thanks. No, thanks. You want me to do what? You want me to take what job? No way. Right. Because they're watching this saying like, I don't want to do that. That's a terrible job. And so good luck getting your people to step up into those jobs, because they've seen what happened, right? They feel it every day. So it's not a good situation. And so the trend that I'm sort of trying to put in front of you is more of a call to action, or a sort of warning that this is a huge, huge issue within our organizations, and it's going to undercut and undermine our ability to succeed. It's only getting worse. AI is not going to solve this one for us, not in the near future. It's only exacerbating it. So we got to do something. So what do we do? Well, a couple just quick things I'll offer up, and there's a whole bunch of, this is kind of like what Perry said. I could spend a half a day talking about what you should do or could do on this, but what I have for you are just 4 sort of things that if you do only these things, this would have a huge impact, I think, may move you in the right direction. Number 1 is check in with your managers, because they are not okay. They are not okay. That means go talk to them, ask them how they're doing. This is one of the big blind spots in employee engagement work, right? Is that we do these surveys, and then we analyze the surveys, and we talk about employee engagement, and then we use that employee engagement to sort of bludgeon our managers over the head about all the things that they're not doing well or not doing enough or whatever, meeting the needs of the employees. But are you paying attention to the engagement of your managers? Like, what are you doing to make sure that managers engaged, that they're getting what they need? Is anybody making them feel valued or cared about or appreciated? I think we need to check ourselves and start checking in with our managers. Take care of your managers take care of your people take care of your customers. But if we're not taking care of our managers, that's where the cycle starts to break down. So check in with them, ask them what they're struggling with, ask them what they need, ask them what kinds of resources might be really valuable to them, what kind of support they're not getting. I'm going to guess they have a lot to say. Pay attention. Use that as your to-do list when you have that conversation. So that's number 1, check in. Number 2 is kill the stupid meetings. My goodness, we are just gutting people with useless, pointless meetings, right? You want more productivity, kill the meetings. Find a way to make fewer meetings, make meetings shorter, make meetings more effective, whatever it is. But like, we've got to be relentless about killing stupid meetings. The other thing that I've learned from talking with, I mentioned this earlier, talking with these HR executives about manager development, is that the reality is, until we fix the sort of the workload on our managers, and as we're working on the meetings, as we're trying to create space for them, they don't have time to step away for a half a day of training or an hour here and there. Like, you can provide them LinkedIn Learning, and they're going to go, that's great. But it's like giving me a subscription, or it's like paying for a membership to go to the gym, but I have no time to ever go to the gym, right? Does that make me healthier? I don't think so. It doesn't get me in better shape if I don't actually use it. If I don't have time to use it, it doesn't matter. And so you have to find a way to provide them with the support they need as they need it. That might be coaching. It might be more bite-sized, on-demand, kind of very problem-centric training or support or interventions. But just-in-time support is what managers need right now. And then you've got to really get serious about supporting their well-being, really helping them. They're struggling and they're going to continue to struggle. They're burning out. Part of that is because nobody's ever really supported them or equipped them or invested in them around how to manage their own well-being. And so this is really about taking care of the manager as a person, making sure that they have the tools to take care of themselves so that then they can take better care of other folks. So that is just like the beginning. But if you were to work on this checklist, it would have outsized impact on the effectiveness of your managers, which is going to have a ripple effect on everything else in your organization. So that is my trend for you and my to-do list for you. And if you want to connect with me, if you have questions or anything you want to push back on any of the ranting and assertions I made today, this is where you find me, my website, my LinkedIn. Come find me. I'm happy to chat. So with that, Matt, let's mix it up.
Let's do it. So is Perry? There we go. So thank you both very much. I have two questions. One is a bit better formed than the other one. So we'll start with that one. I guess from both of you, is where do we find the time to develop it and do the job? You know, Perry was mentioning flattening that skills gap that you can actually go find, you know, in minutes and hours rather than weeks and months of learning things. But I also feel that that's creating an expectancy for people to do it quicker. So rather than like taking the ability to go, we can get the access to this information quicker, that's a good thing. I feel like the pressure is being heaped on these people even more because of that. So if we're talking about organizations becoming more fluid and dynamic, and then Jason, you're talking about managers very clearly being overwhelmed, how do we ensure this middle management layer are empowered and not crushed as organizations become more polymorphic to bring you two together?
Well done. Cool stuff. Shall I kick off on that one? And then I think what Jason's beautifully illustrated there is the, I guess you'd say, the consequence of a system that's been under-attended to for decades, right? So we have lots and lots of technological, modern, scientific advancements, but we've still been cranking a handle like a machine and expecting managers to just do what Jason's saying and just do more with less. It's like it's a ridiculous non-equation, and it's starting to crumble before our very eyes. So that's the kind of diagnosis of it. But then what's the sort of way of recovering? Well, I think we've got to get brutal about things like where are we spending our time and what is it that's going to do for us in terms of impact and value. I don't think we talk about those things any more than we should do, because Jason's hit on a fantastically regularly reoccurring thing. We are absolutely sucked into this vortex of pointless meetings without any option out, without any veto, without any sort of chance to go, I'm not going there. That is not going to be good use of my time, because we frown on it. We look at it as a kind of social non-starter. So I think we can introduce things like, if people are in a meeting and after 5 minutes, if that meeting is not looking like they're going to get anything from it or contribute to it, they should be able to up and walk out or log off and go do something better instead. We need to bring in some brutal ways that people can call out some of these wasteful misdemeanors that we've just got so used to, and not look at it as a punitive type thing. Look at it as us saying this system is not right. This is not the way it should be. So I think there's a kind of collective responsibility that we introduce a little bit more of that. We call it radical if you want to, but I think we're over politely just transacting our way through all this stuff, and it's not adding value, it's not having impact, and it's just overwhelming us. So I think there are little symbolic things we can do like that. So it all boils down to what is the culture here, and that needs a real interrogation, narration, and action orientation to put it right. Because at the minute, most of them are wrong because they're wasting human resource and they are absolutely pointless cycles of non-efficient activity. So we're going to get brutal. I'll give you an example similar to Jason's. Actually, I spoke to a lot of CHROs in charitable organizations, and I said, if I had a magic wand but not limitless money, what would you want me to make happen for you? And they all said, a priority to work on, because I've got too many priorities. I just need one thing I can focus on that helps me create the value I need to. So we just get brutal about things like that.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think there's a couple of things at play. I think one of the one of them I agree with Perry is that we have to be we have to bring a lot more discipline around time. I mean, like because the reality is you can't make time. Like we all have the same amount of time. So it's a matter of like, what are we doing with our time? How are we using it? Are we being intentional about that? And I think that's something that we don't develop or haven't developed competence around that. So we don't support managers, we don't support leaders around that. And as a result, what ends up happening is we become like the container just gets filled as opposed to filling it with intention. So what are the priorities? What matters? And so that's like, you have to put in the things that matter first. So the one-on-one meetings with your people, the maybe time for planning, the time for whatever, and then the other meetings can fill around that, or the other work can fill around that if you depending on how you do that. I think so. There's that piece. I think like an intentionality and developing skills or coaching managers around that piece, prioritizing the things that matter first. I think after that really is sort of two different things that I would say are structurally pieces of this. One is that organizationally, you have to have support around like supporting managers to make those kinds of decisions, right? Supporting managers to Perry's point, to opt out of meetings. Like when I was, and granted, I was towards the end of my corporate life, I knew it. And I had developed like almost no tolerance for pointless meetings. And so what I started doing as an executive, and I did this kind of across my last two roles. I was an HR executive, and when I got a meeting request, and it was one of these meetings that I knew it was kind of a cover your ass kind of request. They just wanted me to be there because of my title or whatever. I would send back and say, okay, hey, I got your request. I would like to know a couple of things. Number one, what is the purpose of this meeting and what are we going to accomplish? Like what's the reason we're having it? And what role do you want me to play? And if they didn't reply to that email with answers, then I declined it. And my calendar opened up. Like I went to probably, I would say at least 50% less meetings, because most of them I was just being thrown on there as a cover your ass maneuver. And so there are things that I think we can do, right? There's things that we can do around that. So structurally, but that requires air cover. I could do that because I was one click from the CEO and nobody's going to push back on me about it. But we have to allow people to do that. The other thing I would say that I think one of the, I guess, positive things about AI coming for certain kinds of jobs is one of the things that undermines managers' ability to manage this is that in too many cases, a manager gets promoted to a manager role, but they aren't allowed to give up their previous role. So I'm a programmer, I'm an accountant or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, oh, congratulations, you now lead the team, but you also need to keep doing all the stuff that you were doing before. And so one of the beauties of AI coming along to take some of that stuff off the plate is that we can finally professionalize being a manager. Like your job is managing people, period. Hard stop. Here's what that looks like. Here's what the expectations are. Here's how you should spend your time. And so it should create a path towards more professionalization, cleaner expectations, cleaner structure around what it means to lead people. So I think those are the three things I think if I was an organization, I'd be thinking about.
So that kind of is almost leading to where my second question was going. So I'm kind of going to jump onto that immediately. Obviously, only a third of people want to become managers, as you stated. I never wanted to become one. I wasn't very good at doing the people management piece. And obviously, career pathways is you become a manager, you manage people. That's what success in career pathway looks like. Totally broken thinking. Always has been, in my opinion. So why wouldn't organizations turn to AI and go, look, if humans don't want to do it, we'll just we'll try an AI middle management layer in there because they don't want to do it anyway, and they're not engaged, it's not working. So where's the risk? To the point where what you were saying, Jason, just then, and where my head was thinking, we go, well, AI is creating efficiencies, and therefore we can take jobs out of the organization. So people think how we can take things out of the organization well, why don't we just totally take that manager role and then split it? So we're saving money here. This person keeps doing their job and becomes brilliant at their job, and they keep pathwaying that way. And we bring in a totally separate person, an individual with capabilities. I'm thinking like the person in Billions is the organizational psychologist, and goes, right, I am here to help you become better at your job and manage you as a human being within the organization. If we're creating these efficiencies, I mean, that could happen in small and large organizations, and totally go, the manager is broken. We now are able to speed things up with AI so we can do this. That's where my head was going in a very foggy way today. So why not? Why not just tear it all up?
I'll go first on this one just because we'll just mix it up. But I think I'm not sure that that's not the path we are going. I mean, I think part of what's wrong with what makes the role of the manager so impossible is that it's the design of the role itself is broken.
Yeah.
And so I do think that, this is where I oftentimes in organizations, people debate over, like, well, a manager is this and a leader is this. And most of the time it's all semantic nonsense, right? We're just debating over personal ideals or whatever. But I think in this case, it's actually relevant to say, okay, management, like in its purest sense, is about, the things that go into kind of how to turn raw materials into things. It's like setting expectations, providing feedback, measuring progress, like it's control, right? It ultimately, management was born out of a need to control kind of chaos and sort of focus it towards an end point that we desire. And I think AI very well may be able to do a majority of that work. I don't think that's something that AI eventually, generative AI or whatever, can do. I think if we pulled that separate from the caring and feeding of the human being, I think there's probably a role for like that sort of some kind of leadership that is hearts and minds. There's a role for coach that kind of helps you think about how are you performing, what the ways you're going about it, what your learning is, right? So I do think that role could probably be parsed out into, in the same way that we wouldn't, like a complex set of machinery, if we're in a manufacturing plant, we wouldn't expect one single engineer to be able to diagnose and fix every single part of a big complex machine. We might have multiple engineers that have multiple sets of expertise to work on different parts of that thing. And so I think as a human, when we recognize the complexity with which human performance needs to be viewed or seen, I think perhaps having multiple engineers, if you will, that help maximize our ability to create things makes a lot of sense.
Brilliant. I'm glad you started with that. And when I started, I talked about liking flat, non-hierarchical, self-managed systems, because to Jason's point, I thought the manager equation is so broken, it's not fair. Well, let's just get rid of them completely and let's operate in these self-organized cells, and we all share the load of it. That was genuinely at the heart of it. But I was probably underestimating some of the complexity that managers have to deal with and sit with. And that's definitely what I'm seeing now. So I've got three sort of intersectional circles in my head at the minute. One is systems. Exactly to Jason's point, we need people who know what the systems are, the flows, the production, and they can be individual contributor types who absolutely have a specialism, but also people who know how all these complex moving parts absolutely come together. The second part of that is science, and I think we are devoid at the moment of understanding the basics of human science when we gift people manager titles. We don't tell them what motivation means, what mood swings are, any of that. And now it's got even more richer field with neurodiversity and so on and so forth, right? So we have under-equipped our managers with science. They are not skilled in understanding human behavior enough, and that's all on all of us, right? And then the other one is souls, as in souls of human beings, right? That's what we're there for. We're there to guard and protect and unleash these delicate souls in that system with science. That's how I kind of see it. We have absolutely got to break that atom of manager into something that's much more sophisticated for the 2020s. And if we don't do it now, it will collapse on itself. That's my sense.
Well, I want us to go deeper, and I do not have
We've only got
the
5 minutes.
capacity to do that today. But yeah, break that atom. I'm
Yeah.
there is something there. There is something there. Is there anything listening to each other that what we're talking about right now that you want to elaborate upon? We've got a couple more minutes, or even want to close on, because your talks are both fantastic, and
Thank
I
you.
mean, we'll definitely spend another hour or week talking about where we're going on this stuff.
I think I've got a thought in my head that what Jason's talked about is the reality of it, what the experience of it is like, and how let down everybody's been by it. So it's almost like, well, who's going to change it? Well, the answer is like we've all been culpable, so we've all got to change it. So I want to hook back onto Jason's word of intentionality. We have got to say this is not good enough, and we as a collective of managers and leaders and people are going to say, what should it be like? And I know it exists, and I talk about this example all the time. What Bob Chapman has done at Barry Waymiller is an absolute revelation in how you look after people and create a thoroughly thriving enterprise through a shared sense of leadership. So it exists. We just all need to kind of learn from people like Bob. So I'll leave that intentionality thing there, because I think that's where it all starts from.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm thinking about two things. One is, I think Perry and I both share, I think there's, as HR leaders, as organizational leaders, as business leaders, there's two things that need to be, that are true at the same time. One is we exist in a broken system of work.
Yeah.
Period. Like it just isn't, it was not designed for humans. It was actually designed for machines that didn't exist yet. And then humans sort of just had to fill in, and then we never really reset the system. And so we're in a broken system. The system needs to be changed. So yes, that is true. And that's going to take time. But right now, people in that system are suffering. And there are things we can absolutely do inside the current system to make it better for the people that are in it. And so that's the teaching people how to kind of be in the system with humanity and care for one another, how to kind of teach them how to navigate and make the system work the best they can. I think those two things are both true. And we need to be about both of those sets of work. And then the last thing I'll say that is, I think, really important for especially those that, you know, Matt, follow your work and probably follow the work that both Perry and I do, is that this year, what's happening right now with AI and what's happening right now with the global economy and what's happening right now with kind of, if you look at macroeconomic trends, we, you know, Matt, your world is people first, right? We're talking about building people first organizations. The macroeconomic trend is creating a permission for organizations to swing back to business first. And there's a whole bunch of leaders and investors out there that are just chomping at the bit. And so they're pulling back, right? We're going backwards. We're going back in time to the pre-pandemic good old days where we could just extract productivity out of people with no consequence, because people can't leave, they can't go anywhere, whatever. So I guess my final thought is that if you care about the work that we all care about this year, you're going to have to find a way. You're going to have to be able to straddle the line of like really doing the work and being all in on the fact that the best way to greater productivity and performance is through creating a more humane way of leading and managing people at work. You're going to have to be all in on that. And if you're not all in on that, they're gonna beat it out of you. And you're gonna, if people are going to suffer, right? There's going to be a pull for productivity this year that's going to move us backwards if we don't dig in our heels and do really exceptional work around making sure that we're creating systems that deliver performance, but do it in a human way, that keep the relationship between the employee and the organization and the manager at the forefront. And so we're going to have to be on our game this year. 2026 is going to require us to be on our game.
I'm adding nothing to that. What a great way to finish it. Thank you very much. And I hope you both have an amazing end to the year, and looking forward to seeing you in 2026. So thank you both.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Matt. Take
Jason.
good care of
Thanks, Matt.
yourself, my friend.
Yeah,
I'm
look out.
trying. I'm trying.
Good stuff.
So thank you, everybody, thanks to Jason and Perry. Really great chat there at the end. And thank you to you for all your support and listening in throughout 2025 and the past 11, 12 years. Really looking forward to being back in 2026. We have one more Friday, Thursday session, more intimate session next week, I believe, on the 11th. So please come along to that. But yeah, sending all the very best to you and your loved ones and your colleagues at the end of the year, and we will see you again in 2026. But thanks very much. Take care of yourselves. All right. Bye-bye.